Hi, friends. Welcome back to the Rachel LaFour Show. For a show of any other name would be harder to Google. If this is your first time listening, welcome. Oh, welcome, welcome. If you're an OG, how are ya? This is a spiritual podcast from me, a comedian, for people who, quote unquote, aren't spiritual. So, for all my little spiritually curious little BBs, gather round the campfire, as it were. This is a podcast where we talk about all things in regard to our soul and living our best life. So there's a lot of motivation things that come in. There's a lot of connection things that come in, well-being. So we kind of run the gamut. And it's funny because your girl's on the mic. Okay. If you were just listening, what an interesting podcast episode to start on, because this is part 2. So that one's on you. If you're jumping in today and you're lost, that's on you. You know what I mean? Pause this, go back to the first one. Just as a reminder, what we are doing is I was walking us through the first and second chapter of Gift from the Sea. This was a book written in 1955 by Anne Morrow Lindbergh, who is Charles Lindbergh's wife, also an accomplished aviator and writer, all on her own. We don't need to mention her husband's accolades for her to be important, but just to kind of put some context into her life and her public life and a lot of the things that she went through. I mean, her family was hashtag canceled before we even really were talking about that. So this was a book that she wrote after a lot of the controversy of the early 40s and things that happened within her family. She wrote this in 1955. Why I have been so taken to the things that are shared here is how relevant they are today in 2023 or whatever it is when you're listening to this. So well, maybe we haven't hashtag progressed as much as we think that we have. Okay, no shade. And so the really what she sets out to do is she goes to a small cottage on the beach, and she wants to really get down to what are all of the parts of herself that her life is so complicated and loud that she doesn't ever really get to get in tune with and hear. And those are the things that she's writing about, kind of writing about the conditions of women, and a lot of them she obviously writes them from like a very traditional standpoint. But again, I think if you're an entrepreneur, creative, tapped into that energy at all, gender and sexuality don't have to play a place in this. I'm reading this more from kind of the energies and the takeaways, so I think it's something that's really applicable to all of us. And so we started talking about the idea of like oneness and being alone. And what does that mean? And the whole first part was, why do we have these fears of being alone? Why do we all feel so lonely? What's going on with our aloneness? And I've actually been reading more and more about loneliness. I guess I found that it's actually like the number one, like not killer of our people at this time, of humans, but that's kind of like in the conversations of like the thing that's really causing us the most strife and then sickness and sadness and all those things is the idea of being alone, which of course it is, because we went through this time where we were only on screens, and then we were on screens and we were just yelling at each other, and so we've created this real sense of aloneness and separation. And then we have social media where it's like, it's all about like, I'm an individual and like, here's what I, niche down and like, just tell me this one thing and you have to be so unique. And I think that just by being who we are, that is our uniqueness. It doesn't need to be boiled down. Yes, I know there's a time and place for like business marketing. That's a podcast episode for a different day. Okay. But for us as humans engaging in the world, when we tap into that frequency, which should be designed for business marketing, that's separate. And even if you are, like me, Rachel Force is my personal brand. The brand is me, right? But even still, of knowing what are the things that I'm practicing as far as like a business marketing thing, and what is solely me and my soul, and how do I create space for my aloneness to get in touch with my oneness, right? It's a little heady, but we're going to dive deep. So this second part, I'm going a little all over the place, but stick with me here, okay? The first thing I want to talk about is she talked about this at the end of the last chapter, and that so each of these chapters are separated into the type of shell that she took from the beach that she's kind of mirroring. Based on this is the way that like this shell looks or the way that it's supposed to function. And that is in turn what's happening in my life, right? So from the first chapter was the channeled whelk, and that's this tiny sea creature that lives inside, and that's his home, and that's where they take everywhere. So that's when she talked about all this whole life form is in this one channeled whelk, and what is, if we were looking at that as our life, what is our pattern of living? What is stuffed in there? So she's taking each of these shells and she talks about going back to put it on her desk. So even when she goes back to her life, that is busy and complicated and not always fully in her control, that she has a space she can look down at her desk and see this seashell and reflect and kind of, she doesn't say this, but tap into that energy, right? Tap into that energy frequency, have that sense of feeling, that vision, etc., right? Whatever language works for you. So I was thinking about that's why I think creating some sort of space for yourself is so important and vital. Some people get very upset with the term altar because, if you come from the church, the idea of that you shall put no other gods before me. So that language may be problematic. Again, I'm really trusting that you guys are even smarter than me. You can read between the lines. That's the term that we're going to use for right now. You can use whatever word works best for you. But I really think it's creating a space that is set up for you in that way. And even if you're in a 1-bedroom apartment, or if you like share your room with your kids right now, you're, solo parenting or whatever it is, any small space, right? Even if it's in your car, what are some talisman or some things that you can keep nearby and keep near you that kind of hold on to that quote unquote frequency for you as you go throughout the world and you get, bumped around like a bumper car because life is crazy, if you're like me and you light an intention candle in the beginning, the first thing when you wake up, and then you go out into the world and you come home and you're like, oh, good God, that was a day, right? Because just like shit happens, right? And the rest of the world is not on your frequency. They didn't get your blueprint. They're not doing their mantras. So yeah, you're going to go out into the world and you're going to meet some beasts. And sometimes they're going to knock you on your ass. So having a space, again, that is kind of cuts to the center of what is it that you want to represent your life. That's always going to change. Sometimes for me, it changes, seasonally. Sometimes I swap out different things that are in my kind of like altar space. Right now, this is where I record the podcast. But on the other side is my husband's office. So like, I have a couple things here that represent me, but nothing that's like super, super true to who I am. So I have little trinkets and things around in different spaces. I have some things in the kitchen that remind me, because the kitchen to me is a place of creativity and it's a place where we feed ourselves. There's a lot of like family love and energy. So that's a place that I want to tap into my energy. Also in the car can be a stressful place. We get stuck in traffic. Somebody cuts us off. There's a lot of things that we can't control. So having something there that's just about like calming is something that I, really value. Right where I brush my teeth, I have like some crystals and pictures of kind of the way that like make me feel like alive and woken up and excited, right? Even here when I record the podcast, you can't see because they're over on this side, or if you're listening, you definitely can't see, so don't try. And I have some kind of smaller talisman that I take around with me that just kind of help me access the things that make me feel the most pure. So I just wanted to touch on that of if you're a longtime spiritual, person, then you're like, yeah, I've got like my altar on lock. Okay. But maybe if you're new to this space, or you're kind of, venturing into some new aspects of healing, or really in these, major transitional parts of your life where things feel very bleak and you're in that heavy, heavy grief, having these few small talismans or things for yourself that access, hope, love, financial security, connection to people that you've lost, things like that, really, really can make all the difference. Kind of touchstones, as they were, just little touchstones. So I'm going to reference the book, obviously, the book today as well, for some of these things, but I'm going off script a little bit, baby. So something that I was really thinking a lot about, because she begins to go, and this is where we left off. So she was talking all about, needing this sense of oneness. Why do we not allow it for ourselves? And it's because, the two episodes ago when I talk about, you can multiply your bullshit or you can multiply the good shit. And when we lead these lives that are so big and so full, it's very difficult for us to create this space of quiet, of oneness, and really kind of getting to the root of all of these things. So she obviously goes on to then talk about, why does this primarily show up as a woman's problem in our society? Now, I would also argue, but this is a conversation for a different day. And I don't think that, like, me as a white woman needs to be the one being like, we should give men a break. That's not what this podcast is. But I do think that there is a lot of space that we don't acknowledge the silent grief and frustration that men feel. And even if you're the provider in your family, you don't have to be, identify as male of your gender or sexuality, etc. But like the what that represents in our society, which is like, you have to earn, you have to be this, you don't have any feelings and rise to the top. And so I would also argue for them, like, they don't have the space, like they're also suffering from kind of this same unable to be one, unable to get quiet with themselves, but they're just experiencing it in the other way, because we have said, this is who you are. If you're a man, if you're an American man, this is who you are, and this is what you have to be, and this is what you have to live up to. And if you're not a white American man, then you're another man, which means that you will never be as good as this white American man. So now not only are you being held to a standard that doesn't even exist, that's even worse off, right? So there's just all of these examples of, I think that there's no get out of jail free card is basically what I'm saying, right? And again, I'm not doing any, tears for the patriarchy here, but I do think that from a perspective of healing and how have we created the mess collectively that we exist in right now, that there are things happening to all of us on all sides of the coin. But in regards to women, it's always give, 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 give more, right? Like that's what we condition to. And the more that you can give, do we love you even more? We just triumph you, right? It's just the lady that can do it all, right? I referenced that last week, and she talks about this in this book. It's the exact monologue from the Barbie movie that everybody was losing their mind over, right? Where it's like, you have to be this and you have to be this, and but be thin, but not too thin. And then, don't talk about being thin, but still want to be thin. And like, don't talk about wanting money, but like, make sure you make a lot of money. But if you make a lot of money, don't make as much money as your partner. And like, it goes on and on and on. And so she talks about how difficult it is that even once women get to a place where they have this sense of fullness, we almost don't know how to operate with it because we're so used to running on empty. That's insane. I mean, right now I'm rereading The Body Keeps Score. And there's a lot of really good, like, trauma informed information in that. And that's when it's like, we always, the idea, it's like, well, just don't be sad anymore. Like, they're so low functioning, or why can't you do this? And it's like, because trauma literally stunts certain parts of your brain where it's almost like replaying the same level of the video game. Like, you literally, your brain and the chemicals have rewired themselves to where you cannot get out of this thing. Obviously you can with a lot of therapy and, resources. Yeah. Conversation for a different day. The point being, where that's actually a lot of what happens with women too, that our ability, once we begin to heal and find this oneness and find this sense of oneness, and what does it mean to be alone and be in relationship with ourselves, we are so used to dating people who aren't good for us, and like treating our bodies like shit, whether that's like, oh, I ate whatever I want. Well, now I have to torture myself because it wasn't fair that I ate all that. So now I'm not going to eat for 2 days, or like all of this insane shit that we do to ourselves physically, emotionally, and spiritually. And that to really I taught a workshop on this once of like, and it was called, I'm happy, now what? Like, we get to this place of, when you've done all this inner work, do you have the capacity? Literally, does your nervous system have the capacity to experience joy and intimacy on a level that feels explosive? And I won't talk for you, but I'll say for me, it's been challenging. It's wild. Like, the intrusive thoughts I get about my sons, that something will happen to them. And yes, that's because the world is crazy and all those things. But really, those intrusive thoughts come in because I have never this part of my life experienced such pure love and connection and felt so seen that I'm still learning how to have that sense of like, which I don't like this sentence because everybody on the internet and social media loves to use it, but it's like, that's your birthright, right? Like wealth is your birthright. And it's like, okay, yeah. Well, also it's nice when your dad pays your rent for you too there, Lindsay, but whatever it is, but meaning like, I do think that there is that sense of, yeah, joy and love and that expansion is how we're all supposed to live. Now, I understand there's all the politics of living, right? Which again is a conversation for a different day. But that's where really we're kind of coming into the fold here. Okay. So Anne goes on to say, this was kind of where we left off from the last episode. And it said, this is a quality to fullness that the psalmist expresses. My cup runneth over. Let no one come, I pray in sudden panic, that I might spill myself away. She goes on to say, is this then what happens to women? She wants perpetually to spill herself away. All her instinct as a woman, the eternal nourisher of children, of men, of society, demands that she give. Her time, her energy, her creativeness drain out of these channels as if there is any chance to leak. Traditionally, we are taught and instinctively we long to give where it is needed and immediately. Eternally, women spills herself away in driblets to the thirsty, seldom being aware to the time, the quiet, and the peace to let the pitcher fill up all the way to the brim. But why not? One may ask. What is wrong with women spilling herself away since it is her function to give? Why am I coming back from the perfect day at the beach so afraid of losing my treasure? It is not just the artist in me. The artist naturally always resents giving himself in small drops. He must save up for the pitcher full. No, it is also the woman in me who is so unexpectedly miserly. Again, written in 1955. Okay, we'll give her a break. Doesn't really roll off the tongue, but we know what Anne's saying here, don't we? So I loved that of why am I coming back from such a perfect day and so afraid of losing my treasure? I have never read what I feel a lot of the time. And this is a very vulnerable, real statement. But sometimes I feel like that when I've had this beautiful day with myself and coming back into the fold with my family because I'm like, okay, well, my husband's going to be exhausted because he was with the kids all day. So now I'm going to have to relieve him, make sure he has what he needs. And then I'm probably going to need to breastfeed Teddy. And then Jonah's going to need something. So he's going to need to get up. Like almost like as soon as I'm full, I'm going to be going back into this space where it's like, here's some, here's some, here's some. That's obviously two things can be true at once. I can want to do that. This is the life that I've chosen. It's the life that I nurture and I'm grateful for. While also there is that sense of my oneness, my fullness, everything that's for me, that yumminess, that honey. I now kind of have to like put away for a little bit, right? And maybe you're like, I have no idea what you're talking about. That doesn't make sense to me. But I would venture to guess that a handful of you listening to this know exactly what I'm talking about and experience it in different ways. And I loved when she talks about that too, of like the artist having that feeling of like, I think that's so much, there's this narrative of the starving artist, which I will do a whole podcast series on that of like, y'all don't be out there starving. Okay. There are so many ways to make money, not only with your art, but to hustle, not even like make money, but live well and make your art. Okay. But we'll talk about that on a different day. But rather than the starving artist, I think is the struggling artist where we have things that are, and I use artist loosely. So in whatever that means to you that you connect with that word, we feel so passionately and know that there's this bigger thing that wants to come out. And if only we had more time to nurture it and to work on it and all of these things, that as we kind of put out things here and there, it's not enough. It doesn't feel fulfilling. It doesn't feel, our metaphorical picture, because we're just kind of giving these things away, as she says, in drips and drabs, right? And I also wrote this. I also think spiritually, this is why so many women have chosen to be kid free, to not get married. And like, which first of all, I'm here for like, however you want to live your best life. Like I am here for this. Okay. But it's like, yeah, it makes sense to me that we have created, because also it's like we used to live in villages. There's all those memes where it's like, had a kid still waiting for my village to show up, where it's like, oh, it takes a village. It's like, does it? Because we all just order Amazon and basically live alone and only talk to each other in DMs. So I'm not really seeing this village, as it were. So it's like, no wonder everything has gotten so much harder and so much more expensive that it's like, to really feel sovereign, to feel like you can go after what you want and feel that you have enough for yourself. You don't, I get it. I understand. Listen, I also want to say as a caveat, I understand a lot of other people come to these conclusions of how they want to live their life for a myriad of reasons. I'm just offering this up as one. So again, I don't mean to pretend or assume that I know about your life choices. So let me just say that, okay? But I can understand through that lens. It makes sense to me. Again, what I just said, where it's like I have this amazing day by myself and I got to journal and I had a big breakthrough and I know what I want to share and I'm going to live forever. And then I pull in my driveway and I see through the window that my husband is holding our baby and our youngest is running around like a chicken with his head cut off. And I'm like, okay, well, hold on to that, honey, baby, because you got to go. And I know that, my husband feels the same way. And so it is, like I said, we kind of all come to it from a different place. But spiritually, that was something that I had written down in this book where I was like, that totally makes sense to me. So she goes on to say, now here is a strange paradox. Woman instinctively wants to give, yet resents giving herself in small pieces. Basically, is this a conflict? Or is this an oversimplification of a many-stranded problem? Y'all, give Ann the mic. Give Ann the mic, okay? How many people have that, you've got that Nona or something where everyone's like, Nona, sit down. And she's like, manja, manja, but then she's just like, no one ever helps. No one ever does anything. And you're like, well, no, we've all been asking you to sit down, but you just keep bringing more food to the table, right? There is that. Well, that's also a generational thing, but there is that paradox of what happens when we want to nurture others, but we also want to nurture ourselves and receive ourselves. And yeah, I love that she says that it's not a conflict. It's an oversimplification of a many-stranded problem. She goes on to say, I believe that what every woman resents is not so much giving herself in pieces as giving herself purposelessly. 1950 frickin' 5. How did she do this? It's not that we resent giving ourselves away. It's that we resent giving ourselves away purposelessly. That is what we're talking about here. When I said, you can multiply your bullshit or you can multiply the good shit. When you are not, that's this idea, the whole idea of like my intention for the day and all this, the word intention has gotten away, from us with this, new age white woman culture that exists on social media. But so much of that is true. Let's go back to the actual, the intent of the word intent. It's almost one of those where it's like to describe what the word is, you're almost using the word, right? Because that's so true. If you are not clear on what your intention is of where your energy is going, you will be resentful. It's the end of the week. You got nothing done. You feel like shit. You didn't, whatever that is. And that's also, this supersedes this idea, which is like, that's that spiritual discipline that will fucking rock you. And I know this, I've been posting on my social media, if you follow me on Instagram, about all like my gym check-ins. And I'm sure people are like, Rachel, no one gives a shit that you went to the gym at 6:20. And part of it is so that when I talk about these things and, it's like, okay, sometimes you want to call bullshit on people. And I want to be like, literally everything I'm telling you is because it's something that I'm doing. So like, it literally is the Rachel LaForce guarantee, right? And some of it is also to hold myself accountable, because how quickly we get on our phone. I was going to make a post and then 2 hours later, I'm still sitting on my phone. Hello, 2 hours. You got shit to do. So again, it's that let's make sure that we are so clear on that intention and that spiritual discipline. How do you want your life to look? What is the pattern of your living? And you can't figure out the pattern of living that you want until you get to that place of developing a relationship to your oneness and being comfortable being alone. Being comfortable being alone. What does that mean to be alone with yourself? How do you nurture yourself so that you can go back into all of these spaces, so that you can pull into your driveway and see your family, and knowing that now you are needed and you're going to be the point person and go in and do it from a godly place and whatever that means to you, right? So here we go. What we fear is not so much that our energy may be leaking away through our small outlets, but that it may be going down the drain. We do not see the results of our giving as concretely as man does in his work. Which, also, fun fact, this is a reason why I really encourage you to find something. I think this is what, like, old ladies, they had this unlock, and just like gay British men. Wait, this will give you a hint of what kind of TV I watch. Of gardening. Gardening. Gardening is such a great way to like get in touch with yourself and have something where it's like at the end of the day, I have something that I did. My hands are dirty. I got in the earth and I connected, right? Anything. I think a lot of reason why people like to bake. Same thing. There is a creation. You have made something with your hands at the end of it. I think, again, so much of us spend so much time on screens, and especially now, people who identify as creators or creatives, we're doing all these things where it used to be, you'd come to the theater and you'd watch me perform. And now you watch my 30-second character reel and you go, like it, and then you move on with your day. And I'm like, why do I feel so like this, again, struggling artist? And it's because everything has become so digital for, I know that's such a pedestrian word, but everything has just become so digital and non-concrete that I think having any sort of little thing like that for yourself, and even if you live in a city and there's maybe not a community garden nearby, but like, can you buy a little basil plant and like, nurture that in your kitchen, or just something that, again, it's that touchstone that reminds you of being able to check in with that thing. So lastly, I'm going to say this. She goes on, when we're talking about, I think a lot of why, and this has been a big thing for me, and I know there's a few of you have asked me to speak more on postpartum. I owe you guys some episodes, and that's one of the things I think women really struggle with in postpartum. One is we're not giving the true space. Again, this idea of like a village and so on and so forth, that somebody's going to come along, but now all of a sudden you have a new baby, you have all, maybe you have other kids at home, or, it's like just all of the other stresses of life, all of the things that will multiply and magnify in your life, they don't go away. And here you are trying to heal your body, and you have, different like the hormonal things, and your hair is falling out and you're sweating and all these things. And it can get to be so frustrating because there is not that sense of oneness. You don't have the time to literally be alone. Right. And that's why I think so many women struggle with that frustration of like, obviously I love my baby, but it's like, then anytime I say anything that's not me going, oh my God, I love my baby. I love my baby. It's changed my life. I love my baby. I've never known a love like this with my baby. Anytime you want to be like, dude, I'm touched out. That now, again, the narrative is changing, but it used to be like, oh my God, you can't say that. You can't say that. Right. Or even the idea of like, I'm so mystified by this, where it used to be where like, your husband could just claim hysteria and like put you in a mental institution if he wanted to. Like, that's insane. And it's like, I think the amount, I've talked about this before, I'll have to do another episode on it, but like the idea of female rage, like if we could like funnel that into somehow powering the world, like forget fossil fuels. I mean, with just the rage that women feel of not feeling heard. And it's like, just because I'm expressing my emotion doesn't mean that I'm going to fall apart. Like, shut the fuck up, Paul. Like, I'm just talking, but I postpartum leads back to this because I thought it was interesting. She says, talking about even how much we give, even naturally, in the way that our bodies, that if you choose to have children, that it's like even your body is producing the food that will, theoretically keep your child alive. So it's like the milk in the breast must be replenished by food taken into the body. If it is a woman's function to give, then she must be replenished too. But how? So it's that same thing of like, in order for your body to be able to produce, and again, I know there's lots of people, they have issues and their bodies are not producing enough milk for the babies. It's a totally different conversation, just on the kind of notion and idea of this, of saying, if our bodies are in postpartum, are, it's like we have to nurture ourselves in order to nurture our baby right there alone. It's that thing that everybody loves to say of like, you have to put your own oxygen mask on before you put on somebody else's. It's the exact same thing. And I hate to break it to you, but nobody is going to make the space for you but you. Not your woke workplace that's like, yeah, girl, like you can have your whole menses off. Or like, we have like a, we've got like a quiet Zen den in our cool office where like everybody can go and Zen out. Because fuck them. At the end of the day, when, it's like your business isn't making money or whatever is happening, like you're the first one to go, you get cut or your hours get cut into. Like, yes, I think the culture of all of those things are important, but ultimately at the end of the day, the only person that is going to make sure that your cup is full to the way in which you need it to be in order to give to other people, no one is going to do that but you. It is that spiritual discipline. So when you're looking around, and this is when like excuse me as I put my tough love hat on, she looks cute in a hat, is when I say nobody is coming to save you. Nobody is coming. Again, I know we all have different privileges and all of the things, and this is a blanket statement, but I am saying where it's like, when my boyfriend broke up with me and I was dirt fucking broke and drinking all of the time and I was so skinny and not nurturing my body and I looked like shit and I felt like shit and I'm like, what am I doing out in LA? Like none of this is working. What the fuck? Like if I just would have been like, well, hopefully somebody will show up. No, then guess what? I would still be sitting in that broke ass apartment, driving a car that's never working right, doing dead end jobs, not getting out of it because nobody is coming to save you. And so what are the things within your privilege, within your resources, within your, all of those things? That's also something you have to find, that alone time, find that oneness to be able to figure out when you're in that place where you feel broken and you're like, but Rachel, you don't understand. And you're right. Maybe I don't know everything. Obviously, I'm the first person to say that. But I don't need to know. You need to know. It's for you. What are those things that you need to go back and look at? And you cannot even figure out what are the things you really need to get that discipline for yourself. And you need to get raw and real with yourself on in order to get not even to the place that you want to be, but just to get out of the place of where you are, right? Nobody can do that but you. So rounding it out, she says, solitude, says the moon shell, because this whole chapter was on the moon shell. Again, she's at the beach. Every person, especially every woman, should be alone sometime during the year, some part of each week or each day. How revolutionary that sounds, and yet how impossible of attainment. Too many women, such a program seems quite out of reach. They have no extra income to spend on vacations for themselves, no time left over from the weekly drudgery of housework for a day off, no energy after the daily cooking, cleaning, washing for even an hour of creative solitude. And then she goes on to talk about, is that an economic problem or so on and so forth. But I just, again, some of those, the specifics may change, but the reality of that, which is like, it goes back to that thing of intention. Where are you purposelessly giving yourself away that you're not nurturing your oneness, your relationship with yourself, right? That aloneness. Certain springs are only tapped into when we are alone. The artist knows he must be alone to create, the writer to work on his thoughts, the musician to compose, and the saint to pray. But women need solitude in order to find again the true essence of themselves. That firm strand which will be the indispensable center of a whole web of human relationships. She must find that inner stillness, which Charles Morgan describes as the stilling of the soul within the activities of the mind and body, so that it might be still as the axis of a revolving wheel is still. Interesting that she chose a man to quote for when speaking about women, but Anne again, 1955. Okay, so I'm going to end on this, which I love, when she says that there are only certain springs that can be tapped into when we're alone. And that to me is what this finding your oneness, finding, what does that mean, right? It's not the self-care of like, well, I took myself to dinner this week, which I'm here for all of that. We talked about that in the last episode. But really, what I challenge you to do of finding this oneness, finding where am I purposelessly giving myself away? What do I really want to do? What are my identifiers that don't work for me anymore? Where am I really wanting to show up in the world? The only way to do that is to get so disciplined about finding that quiet time. And then the other part of it, which I'll talk more about later, but it's like, then once you hear the answer, how do you take steps to follow in what you've heard? Because that's also why I understand why so many people just like come into the earth. It's the only two things that are inevitable are death and taxes. Very dark, but also super true. I get it. Life happens so fast and so much shit happens to us that I understand why people are like, yeah, I don't really want to like be spiritually disciplined, LaForce, and then carve out all this time to like really get to know myself. And then to hear shit about myself that I really don't like from myself. And then I got to act on that to fix it and or follow it. Like, no fucking thank you. And to that, I would go, I totally get it. Do you want to have a Samoa and let's just talk? Like, I get it, you know? So I thought it was interesting because I've really been working on getting to the root of what is it that I'm really trying to say here? What do I really want to share? And the reality is like, who am I really? Not the identifiers of things that I've created for myself to socially fit in or to feel good about myself or that my ego likes. Who am I really? So I pulled a card for myself yesterday when I was spending time with myself. And again, I'm always just like, you can't even make this shit up. And I was like, I just want to get to the most pure part of myself. That's the thing I say in myself, in my head, when I'm saying my prayer as I'm going through my oracle cards to pick a card like I do here. I just want to discover and get in tune with the most pure part of myself. Do you want to know what card I pulled? You ready for this? If you're listening, you're not going to see the reveal, but just hold on. Here we go. The purity card. She pulls the purity card. Okay. I start laughing. I'm like, wow, I've said this many times. I can't make this shit up. And to me, again, that's that idea of like the cosmic joke, where it's like the more in tune you get and the more that you really, I think, become curious and become a curious, explorer. That's so lame of your life and of your destiny. The more and more that things become available to you. I think that when we've been, again, it's that simplicity of life, when we have been chasing and filling it with all this shit, no wonder you're confused, right? It's that very easy saying of like, everything you need, you already have. It's the purity card. Everything you need, you already have. I understand. I'm not talking about like resources and the ability and that, some people are the first people to go to college in their family and so on and so forth, right? Those are the earthly politics of the world that we exist in. But from our spiritual place, the things that are in our control that hopefully will lead to things in our outer life, of the things that we can change. Some of us, they're easier to change than for others, but the things that we can internally, and we all have those same internal struggles of, of healing our generational trauma if we choose to, of acknowledging our trauma. What does that mean? How do we want to let go of it? Maybe I don't want to be in these cycles anymore. And really getting to that part I was talking about, it's the part of us that stings. That's the way I refer to it. It's like, it's that part of you that's like, ooh, got too close. It's the things that make us feel vulnerable, the things that like somebody jokes about and you're like, oh, whatever, man. It's that part of us that knows everything you need, you already have. So what is that part of you that is the most pure? And are you in tune with that at all? So that's what I want to leave you with, is a little bit of homework. I know today was more of a talking episode, which is hilarious if you're like, yeah, LaForce, that's all you do. But meaning there wasn't as much structure, but that's what I want to leave you with is, even this episode of the oneness and being alone was in two parts. It's also really a part, it's almost kind of this trilogy of starting from, simplify to multiply into these two things of what is your pattern of living? What do you want to multiply in your life? What do you need to let go of so that you can live more live with more purpose. You don't want to live more purposelessly, or you do, and then you're on your own journey. But I'd love to hear your podcast. And so those are a lot of questions, and I know I posed a lot of them last week as well, but really thinking on those things, because really the only question that I really want to leave you with right now is, would you be willing to create space monthly, weekly, daily to your oneness and really getting quiet and listen to that voice? If you don't already, like, can you actually commit to that spiritual discipline? And if you had to talk about the most pure part of yourself, the part of yourself that knows, the part of yourself that stings, what does that part of you want to say? if you were solely listening to that part, what wants to be expressed, what wants to come through. We don't have to do anything with that information yet. But if you were truly to get quiet and get in that sense of oneness, what is that most pure part of yourself want to do, want to say? And frankly, if I had to guess, it would look a lot like your inner child, because it's the part of you that came in knowing what you wanted to do before all the shit happened. So that's where I leave you today, my friends. This has been so great. This was part 2 of finding your oneness and being alone. So again, that's like, what do we do to uncover everything to even like find what our oneness is? How do we make space for being alone? Then how do we activate what we've heard? The second part of what do we activate what we've heard? That becomes a lifelong endeavor, right? So maybe we'll talk a little bit about that next week. I'm not too sure yet exactly what I want to share next week. So stay tuned, baby. Friends, I am offering a group reading September 14th. If you're listening to this in real time, again, that's Thursday, September 14th. We're going to be doing a group reading. Most of you, if you are a part of the spiritual community, you will know what that means. If you were kind of new to some of that language, that just means I'm, like when I do these card pulls, even all of these episodes, I kind of channel and talk as I'm going. So when I do these group readings, there may be 3 of us there. There may be 300 of us there. I'm not sure how many people are going to sign up. And we'll kind of talk about, that'll be September 14th. So we're going to kind of talk about what are the energies that we're letting go of? What are the things that are kind of coming in? I'll pull a couple cards and really offer some kind of channeled messages to the group collective as to what we're going through. So it's a really great way if you're wanting to kind of dip your toes in or kind of see, me in that line of action. It's a very low barrier to entry, both financially and as far as like, I don't really want to be seen yet. It's a great way to come and kind of get some messages and get some insight without like fully being in it, as it were. So again, that is Thursday, September 14th at 8 p.m. That's Eastern Standard Time. That's $22, super cheap, and a really great takeaway. Also, it is recorded, so I will send you the recording. So that way it's kind of something that you can revisit during that whole kind of time as we're switching from this summer to fall energy. So it's something that you can hold on to and check in with again. So again, you can go to rachelforce.com and book that. Again, all my links are everywhere. I've got my special for individual, my one-on-one readings. Those are still $66. Oh, what? You're welcome. $66. It's a steal. It's a full hour. You'll come in with me, and typically I've already pulled a card. I've kind of been reading your energy and just really start sharing and kind of hearing what it is that you're wanting some clarity on, and we'll really sit and work through a lot of that. So I will leave you feeling more clear and hopefully like really kind of like buzzy and excited. So that deal at $66 is only going on until October. And then the investment will go back up to its normal price. So if you're balling on a budget, if that's something you've wanted to do, somebody's been saying they want to get you a gift. If you feel like that price point works, jump on it. I would absolutely love, love, love to work with you and would be honored to do so. So I have those 2 things. Those are my wares that I'm peddling at the moment. As always, if you like this podcast, you can go and watch the full video on YouTube. You can subscribe to my YouTube. I do weekly card pulls there. Lots of information and stuff that's ramping up there. You can also do $5 support the podcast. So if you've always been like, man, I wish I could support Rachel's work in other ways, that also feel very easy output for you, I would love your financial investment of $5 a month that will go to bringing you more content just like this. So you can go to Spotify, to my page, The Rachel Force Show, and hit that button of support the podcast for just a wee $5 a month. You can probably even like figure out how to write it off. You know what I mean? I'm not your CPA. Could you imagine if I also did taxes? Oh, time to go. All right, you guys, I love you so much. I am with you. I know there's a lot of really radical stuff that's happening. I can feel it all around. So if you are feeling whatever it is that you're feeling, because it is raw and real out there, I see you, I feel you, and I really do. I love you. Mean it. Bye.